The first thing I want to do is see if there's any public comments. Yes. All right, yeah.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Good morning. I've been here before. I recognize a few new faces. My name is Melissa Cotta, and I'm co-founder of Bridging the Gap for Safety and Healing. 3 years ago, we first came, Brian Ganley and I, and a couple of survivors of loss from our bridge jumps, and also a newspaper reporter. So within this 3 years period, we have made some progress. The barriers aren't up yet, but we've made quite a bit of progress, and we've gotten a lot of attention and a lot of positivity from all of you and legislation. So today, I have two things I'd like to share. I'd like to share a little bit more of my story, specifically regarding safety issues on the bridges, and also what we're proposing at this point as we go forward with legislation this year. So it'll just take a couple of minutes for me to share. Thank you. So 6 years ago today, this month actually, not exactly today, I drove across the Mount Hope Bridge and I stopped behind what I thought was a disabled vehicle and a person in this vehicle. When I stopped, the man got out of the vehicle, and I quickly realized that he was there to jump off the bridge. And so that day, the moments before and after the leap from this bridge, I will never forget. And so as a professional trained in crisis intervention, I was well prepared to handle someone in this type of situation of distress. However, what I wasn't prepared for that day was that the center span of the Mount Hope Bridge was the dangerous and lethal combination of feel-like temps below zero, wind gusts close to 60 miles per hour, ice on the bridge deck and railings. Traffic continued to flow, alternating both directions, and a railing less than 35 inches without a safety barrier. So due to these unsafe conditions, my interactions with this man were limited. I managed to get my car door open and yell out a few words, grabbing his attention before I was forced back into my car by the brutal cold and strong wind and a railing not much higher than a big step. My training places safety as a top priority, so I continued to do crisis intervention from inside my car. Not only was I dealing with trying to stop a man from leaping to his death, but I needed to consider my own safety and the safety of the passengers in my vehicle. One of my passengers and very close friend attempted to get out of the car to grab the man who at this point was crouched on top of the rail, facing the water with one hand grasping on the cable. He turned several times to make eye contact with me as I continued to try to speak to him through my windshield and open window. I convinced my friend to remain in the car, and at that very moment, the man on the railing turned his head towards me once more. I asked him to get down. He shook his head no, turned back towards the water, and in a flash, we watched him disappear from the railing. My friend went into shock immediately, and in these first moments and for the next several weeks, he blamed me for this man's death because I stopped my friend from trying to save the jumper. So eventually my friend realized that he could have easily fallen off the bridge as well while attempting to save this man. That day was an impossible situation. The man who jumped to his death that day was unknown to me, but he was a human being, a member of our community, a friend, a father, a husband, and neighbor. I have met many survivors of bridge loss due to suicide from Rhode Island bridges. My story is one of thousands. Ultimately, these preventable losses impact all of us. We have the tools following federal and state safety standards to stop accidental and deliberate bridge deaths. Bridging the Gap for Safety and Healing is proposing the installation of temporary barriers now, as would be done on bridges once construction begins. In the interim, while we wait for permanent barriers to be installed, The time is now to make our bridges safer by installing temporary barriers. We implore our leaders, the governor, the House Speaker, the Senate President, and you, the board of the Round Turnpike and Bridge Authority and the Round Department of Transportation, to not let one more death happen and order temporary barriers installed today. So a certified letter will be formally sent requesting temporary barriers while we wait for legislative and state bidding processes to work their way to a positive outcome. And these letters will be sent to all the aforementioned people. So as I stand here today, you know, I've gone forward and gotten a lot stronger, but being here today is very surreal. And the anniversary of the jump is almost to the day, and 6 years later. And people ask me often, when do you give up? I never give up. I speak with the survivors every week. Some are struggling more than others. We have people that have losses from 30 years ago up until just recently, in recent months. We've had a couple attempts in recent weeks. And there's no rhyme or reason people deal with it differently. Some of them help us with our cause, and it gives them some kind of relief and peace. Most of them tell us that getting these barriers up, they know it doesn't change their situation, but it does bring them peace. And one of the main things that comes up is they realize that someone actually cares. Because right now, most of them think that, well, this just keeps happening, no one cares. So part of my job is to tell them that we do care, that we all care. The process is slow, it's painstaking, and hopefully no one else has to die before this happens. So if anyone has any questions for me, I'm going to stay because I think part of your agenda has suicide deterrence on there. So if you want to speak to me after or contact me, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comments? Hearing none, okay, I'd like to get an approval of the minutes of January 12th of 2022.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have to have a discussion and a vote, okay, on the Newport Hill Bridge routine underwater inspection. I told Eric he was going to be busy, okay? The amount of $105,850, not to exceed that amount.
Thank you. So we've been out this year for solicitation for our on-calls. We have 6 on-call inspection contractors. Newport underwater inspection was done 5 years ago, so it's due this year. We had 3 responses from our 6 on-calls. I basically asked for them to quote, send us quotes on it. 3 responded, and the prices ranged from $105,850 to $148,524. We're recommending that we approve a task order with Collins Engineers in the amount not to exceed $105,850. Coincidentally, so I looked back at the 2017 cost, and there was a task order process back then for $288,000 for underwater. There was actually one task order that was lumped together, underwater and the approach spans inspection at the same time. The underwater piece was $288,000. So we had put in the budget $310,000 since that was 5 years ago. However, going out to quotes yielded a very different and unexpected result. And what's interesting is Collins was a sub to the consultant that did the inspection in 2017. Collins is now the lowest price on their own. So they're certainly qualified. They've done good work here before. I have no issue with the price. I think that it was really a function of going out for quotes and basically asking consultants to sharpen their pencils.
Good. Good job.
Sounds good.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, nice to hear that competitively done.
Yeah.
And actually, I've had experience with Collins before. They're
Yeah.
Very good contractor.
Yep.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And then again, Eric, your routine inspection of these 7, minor bridges, of which, right over here are the bridges. And I actually had Laurie send me a picture of this guy, said, what 7 bridges are we talking about? And you can see, I don't know if I call those bridges, but they are considered our bridges, so they have to be inspected, okay, for an amount not to exceed $38,630, so, go Eric.
Thank you again. Yes, these 7 bridges basically start at just before the Jamestown Bridge coming eastbound, Fishing Pier Access Road Bridge, and then they're the minor bridges that take you across 138. There's a couple that cross North Main Road, and then we've got the wildlife passages that were installed when they put that section of 138 in back when they built this corridor and the Jamestown Bridge. These are due for their every 2-year routine inspection. Again, I went out to the 6 on-call consultants and asked for quotes, and though it's a much smaller scale, I got a similar result where in the past it was $54,000 combined for all these 7 bridges when I added them up, and we got a low price of $38,630. All 6 consultants did respond, and the prices ranged from $38,630 to $68,822. So another significant savings on some inspections, but we're recommending that we approve the task order with Majeski and Masters for $38,630.
Okay, this is good too, very good news for all these.
So I can comment, just so people understand, you were talking about them not really being bridges.
Yeah, it's so
Well,
cool.
they're culverts essentially. When they were first put in, this was all done for the protection of wildlife. So wildlife could migrate between, back and forth, and they weren't cut off by the road, the new highway. So the whole idea was just to create a thoroughfare for the deer and antelope and whoever else went through there. But those are critter tunnels.
No, that's
Yeah,
what I
those-
kind of look at it, because, when I saw this, I said, what are these 7 bridges, you know?
Those also, 4 of them are wildlife passages, the other ones are actually
Right.
highway bridges.
Yeah.
Highway bridges, yeah.
But I, when I saw them, I said, okay, this makes sense to me, we gotta get this looked at anyways, okay. So, and everybody can see them there. So can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, Eric, this one's really got me, this rocker burying support with these unbelievably daunting pictures, okay, of rust and so on and so forth. Can you explain this? This is just for discussion purposes. We don't need to vote on anything.
It is, that's right, and when I first had prepared the agenda, we were going a slightly different way, and we've done some more work on it, and I've got some additional information to discuss now. WSP just did the routine inspection of the approach spans. They had completed it a couple of months ago, so when they were ready, I hold a debrief after these inspections, especially on the major bridges, and they come in and basically go through the report and say, here's where your issues are, in the immediate 1 to 2 years, these are the things you need to look at doing. One of the items that they noticed was at Pier 5W, which actually, if you're going over the bridge, it's the first pier off of the shoreline that's in the water. That's Pier 5W. There's a plate bearing span there, and it's got a lot of weight to it. There's about 800,000 pounds on each bearing. When the bridge was built, they used rocker bearings, which was a typical type of bearing that was used back then. And as the bridge expands and contracts due to heat and cold because of the steel, the rocker bearing does this on the bearing pad and it moves back and forth. Over time, what happens and what can happen and typically does is you get pack rust that starts to build up between the rocker surface and the bearing pad.
Yeah.
And although there's pins in there that keep it from sliding back and forth, the pack rust will keep the bearing from moving in its normal operation. And over time, it'll start to creep its way out of proper alignment. So on one of the photos, you'll see an inclinometer that is showing the angle of the bearing,
I
and
saw that. What is this thing?
WSP has a chart tracking this over the past, 5 to 7 years or so, and what they've seen is a slow progression in the movement of the rocker bearing. It's at the point right now where they're recommending that we do something to, in the first place, put some shoring under here, just in case, the worst case that would happen is the bearing would finally lop over, and at that point, the span would drop some. So we want to prevent that from happening in the immediate term. In the long term, what would need to happen is either you jack the beams and reset the bearings, or we replace the bearings with a modern type of elastomeric bearing, which is better for seismic. These are terrible for seismic. And the seismic event, this basically would tip and just drop. It would fall under the air gap. So what what WSP has been doing is looking through and seeing how could we shore the bearing, but we also at the same time need to leave the pier accessible to jack the beam in the future to either reset the bearing or replace the bearing. And where we started to go with shoring has turned into these loads are so large on this beam that we can't fit, and we can't put shoring in place that would allow jacking in the future to happen, because you would have to jack off the pier and put other equipment in there. So now we're going in the direction which is actually more towards the long-term solution. And they looked at adding a concrete, what they call a corbel, off of the pier cap. And basically it's an extension of the pier cap, which gives you some more real estate there, both to put shoring and to put a jack in the future to lift it when we do make the correction here. That's the direction we're moving, and it's really the only direction that we can go, but what the good thing is it's not wasted money. It's money that's preparing for the jacking of this span. And I will be recommending that we put a project together to replace the bearings versus reset them, because these bearings are just outdated and they're no good in a seismic event. By putting the corbel in and then replacing with a modern type of a bearing, we can actually meet seismic requirements for this span moving forward for the long term. So, just to give you a flavor, right now it looks like we're in the order of, without the bearing replacement, it looks like we're in the order of about 100,000 for the whole job to add the corbels onto the pier cap, put the shoring in place, and then, at that point, we would move forward with designing new bearings and the permanent project. But at that point, we would be in a condition where if the bearing were to tip, the shoring would be right there and it would be shimmed up to the beam and nothing would happen. It would stay in place. So, and then we would have the provisions to go in and put a jack there and replace the bearings. So.
How soon are you anticipating doing this?
Oh, I would, this immediate project, we'll put it out to bid within a month, I would say, and get it out there on the street. And with the weather getting better, I'm not concerned about doing concrete work, because we'll have warm enough days where they'll be able to get that corbel put in. So.
Kind of used to seeing stuff like this. Actually, a hell of a lot worse than this. But just for the public and members of the board who aren't engineers, you've determined, and the consultant has determined, that there is no clear and present danger, right?
That's right.
Okay, so it is safe in the
It's
condition.
absolutely safe.
It's rusted a bit, but it's safe.
That's right. We want to get to it before
and
we
you're
can say it's not safe.
Exactly. So, when do you see a permanent, have you made provisions in your, for example, a 10-year plan to maintain the rest of them in a way that gets them into a state of good repair, or
Yeah.
keeps them in
Yeah.
a state of good repair? Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, coincidentally, since we're finalizing the CIP now, we inserted this project in there as well, since this
Great.
came up. So we were able to
Great.
put that in.
Good.
Yeah.
So you have plans to do all of them permanently, probably using a new method or a better method to take them into the future?
Well, so the two that need, these are only two right now on this one. There's two big plate girders.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch that have been done already on the trestle spans. We are monitoring the rest of them, which
Okay.
they're nowhere, they're just not
Okay.
near being replaced. But yes.
Are your consultants able to give you a kind of life cycle so you can anticipate when the major capital investment would be needed to make
On the bearing replacements?
on all of the major components like this on your
Oh,
bridges?
sure, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How
Good.
many of these are there?
There are still some other rocket bearings down on the trestle span towards the Newport side. There are a bunch of them that were replaced already because they had gotten into a situation like this. I think you had worked on that project there, so Peter's got some photos.
That's what the new ones look like.
Yeah.
If you just think of these rocket bearings and how they're relatively able to be compromised by an earthquake loading, these are the new ones that the whole east side of the bridge was done this way.
Oh, I see.
And this is, you look at it, it's secure, it can't go anywhere. It's a Teflon pad with concrete on either side of it.
They slide.
And Can't move anywhere. I
Oh,
mean,
that's very different.
yeah,
it's very
it changes the tone of the whole thing. And this is what Eric
From
is
a little-
suggesting, that we ultimately get to The trestle part, the east side, was very vulnerable, more so than the rest of the bridge. This is a logical extension of
Yeah.
where we're at now. That's what
Great.
it looks like now.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
those types of bearings, if you had a seismic event, a significant seismic event, the spans would essentially slide back and forth and they wouldn't drop.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing that they put these things in back then.
Like that door.
they didn't have the materials or that type of technology then, you know, certainly, and, I mean, things have come a long way,
Yeah,
so.
we're talking 50 years ago.
But again, we're gonna fix it, but it's safe.
It's safe.
Okay, good.
Good.
That's a very important concept to maintain.
Good that you emphasize it.
It's,
Yeah.
it's safe, but it's one of those projects that we're not gonna wait, you know,
Good.
we're just gonna go out there and get it done.
And
Good.
Director, just so you know, Eric is used to my asking the question you have
Yeah,
asked.
good. Good.
I'm
On
used to
many
Lori's
different
eyes going
issues.
wide when I bring these pictures in.
Yeah, those are some
On
very
many different
interesting,
issues.
ominous pictures, I'll tell you. I said, well, this is not good. Okay, now can you give us a summary of your capital projects?
Yes.
It's a nice summary in the report too, I thought that was very good. So you can just quickly summarize it.
I'll go through these quickly. We're still working to finish up Mount Hope Bridge fiber terminations when the weather is conducive on contract 19-1. The AET project out here, that the phase 1 of the AET project is complete. The only item we have left is we're going to swap out the galvanized Thomas Barry sections that swing open in favor of ones that have ends already welded on. So these were brought in, they have ends for them that can be attached to them, and then you can pin it to the adjacent barrier.
Okay.
There's a supply-demand issue. Those ends we cannot find. Even the manufacturer has none of them available. However, they found 2 sections of barrier that have the ends already on them. So, Lynch, I'm thinking Lynch over at the Pell project. Edna is going to bring in the new sections that have the ends already on them and swap these pieces out. That's all that's left on that project. In the meantime, on the design end, we continue to work towards a conceptual plan, you know, for the final project. Miscellaneous repairs to Mount Hope and Secana, which is a contract with Piasecki, is essentially complete with the composite stairway completion at Mount Hope out the North Anchorage. We have, I mentioned this the last time, we have money left in the budget, and we had just come off of the Mount Hope interim inspection, and there's some items, steel repairs, and things of that like that they recommend doing. So since Piasecki's contract included that type of work, we're actually working on a list of items, and they're going to give us a price on that, and hopefully we'll be able to complete everything in that was identified in the interim inspection report. Jamestown guardrail and railing painting is finished. They were finishing sealing sidewalks, but that's all completed now as well. ETMS, nothing really to update on that one. Again, I mentioned we finished the Pell approach spans inspection, and we just got those reports in, and that's where this rocker bearing issue came up. Mount Hope interim inspection is complete. And Attain is still working on the Jamestown road ratings and should be completing that in the next month or two and submitting that. And capital improvement plan, the plan is complete. It's from the project list and draft order of projects, and Jeff will then be taking it and working on the plan of finance with the financial consultants. So.
Will we get a copy of the draft, just so we can just kind of take a look at it before we're asked to vote?
Yeah, we can get a copy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I recommend that, because it's pretty complex when you look at, this is the future for 10 years. And I think, rather than just looking at it in one meeting, maybe if we look at it in draft form and have an opportunity to maybe give some input and then vote on the final.
Sure.
Yeah, I absolutely don't want to, build a plan of finance and, that's
Have it
presented to
turned
you
around.
all, and you have a lot of questions and concerns, and I end up spending more money than I.
Might not be a bad idea to do as Peter said, get us an advanced copy, and then in a meeting prior to the one that you're asking for a vote, actually give a presentation on it, so
Okay.
that all members can get a feel for what kind of projects and what the need is, and how the funding is going to flow.
I think that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Good ideas. Okay. right.
Yeah, and the general, the general gist of this capital plan redo was exactly that. We looked through all the projects to take out ones that were not needed. They might have been nice to haves or wants at one time, and we know that our capital needs are certainly greater, so we basically made it, the capital plan this is the stuff that has to happen.
Great, great.
All
Okay.
right, thank you very much. You've been a very busy man this morning. Jeff, you're up. Okay, financial statements.
Oh,
You have a question?
Madam President, it did come up during last week that I saw the load rating on the Jamestown Bridge, but the load rating on the Mount Hope Bridge, we got some feedback that there wasn't a sign on one end there. I think there are signs on both ends, but they're a little small. You're working with our sign people to get bigger signs up there?
I talked with Bob Rocco. He called me and asked if he said, are you able, would you like to take larger signs? I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah, good.
He's going to have them made larger and send them with posts. I spoke with Frank and we'll get them installed.
You get them installed?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, one of the signs, the writing, the letters were starting to peel off on one side. So.
Okay. So I can report back to the public. Great, thanks.
Very good.
All is well, right?
Any other questions about it? Nothing? Thank you, Eric. Jeff, we're doing really good.
So far, so good.
You want to explain this?
Sure. The first page of the financial report is our December month-to-date and year-to-date P&L, so we get to budget. With respect to our year-to-date financials, total revenue was higher by $2.4 million, or 13%. Total revenue was higher by $1.8 million, or 17%, as a result of the conservative approach we use when budgeting, as we did not know what the impact of COVID would be on our top line. Budget traffic assumed 90% of 2019 levels, and through December we achieved 95% of 2019 levels. In fact, November, December months were very good months. The traffic was at 98% and 97% respectively of 2019 levels. The gas tax revenue was higher by $453,000 or 6%, as the budget assumed 97% of the revenue estimate that was provided by the Department of Revenue. And year-to-date operating expenses are lower than budget by $1.1 million or 16%. And I just want to give you a quick rundown on some of the variances for the operating expenses, if I could. Personnel expenses, which is wages, taxes, and benefits, were low by $684,000. The major variances included, we built $200,000 into the budget for severance payments as a result of the AET conversion. However, last year we were able to work with our auditors and actually record it last fiscal year's. So 200 of that 684,000 was a result of not having to spend that money. We also have open positions still. We have 1 in engineering, 2 in IT, 1 in finance, 1 or 2 positions in maintenance, which have now subsequently been filled. And then we have multiple positions in the Easy Pass tolling operations area. And finally, we have lower healthcare costs and 401k contributions due to those open positions. On the contractual services, they're lower by $72,000, and this is primarily due to lower legal fees, partially offset by the higher advertising costs incurred as a result of the AET rollout. Other supplies and expenses are higher than budget by $215,000. This is due primarily to the additional credit card transaction fees as a result of our higher volume, additional postage and supplies as a result to eliminating the cash and moving to the bill by mail, and about a timing error or a difference of $25,000 related to our dues that we pay to IAG. It got paid in December and it's in the budget for January. Insurance is lower by $126,000, and that's due to the negotiated premiums on 8/1, and also we did receive a credit from Beacon Mutual on our workers' compensation. And repairs and maintenance is lower by $165,000. That's due to lower maintenance and electrical contractor costs and a one-time insurance claim recovery offset by the additional vehicle maintenance costs. And bridge inspections, that's low by 325,000. Again, that's primarily due to the inspections. We're higher in the budget. And you know, through Eric's process of making sure we got bids and quotes, we're seeing a lot lower costs than what was in the budget. And then finally, transponder expenses, they're higher by 20,000, and that's a result of we're selling more transponders. So you saw the higher revenue, and now you're seeing the higher expenses. Compared to 2020, it's very difficult to kind of go through that. It's only because it's all due to COVID.
Yeah.
You know, so you have the higher revenue because, you know, we just have been doing so much more. I do have the detail on that. I can either go through it with you if you'd like, or again, it's just due to higher COVID. I mean, due to higher
That's gonna be the
revenues.
predominant issue, I think, for most of it.
Yep.
I have a question.
Any questions, yes?
So it looks like we're heading for a surplus, right? And will you be developing for the board's review a plan to use that surplus? What the Turnpike Bridge intends on doing with it?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. So
Yep.
it'll roll over as part of our net income.
Yep.
And obviously that goes to fund our capital projects.
Great.
So I have a kind of a cash flow, a 10-year cash flow.
Mhm.
And it has our revenue, expenses, what our net income is, and what our capital plan is, and the cash that we have on hand. So
Gotcha.
that net funds those capital expenses along with the cash that we have from our bond proceeds.
Right. Good.
So I can share that with you when I do the budget.
Okay, great.
And I do appreciate the listing also of the expenses, okay, the checks that you reported for the time period. That's also very good. That's something new
Sent a
that.
lot of checks to the DOT, huh?
Yeah, I noticed that. I said, boy, I'll tell you, there's more DOT checks than anything.
Well, those are the tolls, right, that they
Yeah,
collect
right.
for
Well,
us.
that's exactly what I was just kidding.
That's
Yeah.
what it is, but it's still quite a bit. I thank you.
The amazing thing about those tolls is that through the pandemic, the only revenue stream into DOT that did not fluctuate were the truck tolls. They remained absolutely rock solid.
Good source of
That's
income.
interesting.
Thanks to the help of all of you.
Any further questions? Moving right on. Laura, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. So Jeff has already really covered the traffic, so if you look at if you look at the report, it's really, he's told you the gist of that already. You can just see on the traffic graph, there's that tiny little blue dot,
Yeah,
because
you
all we
should
have
see
is
me trying to find that dot, okay.
Yes, I imagine, but all we have is January so far. And as you see, it's a bit lower than last year,
Yeah.
but we had some pretty significant weather events in January and that required closure of the bridge, restrictions on the bridges, closure of the bridge at one point. So that does start us off. February is traditionally our slowest month for traffic here at our only tolling point. So February won't look so great either, but I do expect to see more, a line on this graph in the months to come that will be more like the 2021 and 2019. So we should continue to see that. On the federal funding requests, we are still awaiting our debriefing on the RAISE grant that we submitted for the dehumidification of the cables and the anchorages on the Mount Hope Bridge. We're still awaiting our date for a debriefing. In the meantime, we're preparing for April when our next proposal on the RAISE grant program will be due. So we're looking to see what we can do better. We all have some ideas. We're already moving on those ideas. You've seen, there's a picture right there behind Bill O'Gara over there of the Mount Hope Bridge cable dehumidification project, showing the wires that we're talking about, the wires that are corroded. Some of them have had some corrosion and some breakage in them, and that's what we've been working on. Really, that is the results of climate change, higher levels of humidity, which have caused an acceleration in that deterioration of the wires. So we're going to focus more in our next proposal. We think we did in the first raise grant proposal, but we'll focus more on climate change. We will also focus more on jobs that would be created, climate jobs. Senator Oyer from Newport she and Senator Whitehouse went to a climate change forum in Scotland and came back with a report on climate change, and also there's been a Cornell study on climate change and climate change jobs that we can develop, and that project is an ideal example of where we can have a win-win-win. We can address climate change. We can make this bridge last us, we hope, another 50 years, right, Eric? I know the
50
George
or
Washington.
more.
Yeah, the George Washington Bridge in New York is undergoing dehumidification right now. It's 90 years old. They're expecting to get another 90 out of it. So we're hoping that as well. So jobs, address the climate change, and make certain that this bridge continues to to serve the East Bay area and to serve the freight needs also of the East Bay area. So in addition to the RAISE grant program, there are many other opportunities now for which we are very grateful, and we're going to turn over every rock until we find the ones, with the help from DOT, to find those that are the most appropriate for the bridges that we're responsible for, and make certain that we're out front looking for that money and know how best to get that money.
Can I interject I want to follow up on Director Alvidi's comment. With this significant surplus that we're looking at this year, is it possible that we would be able to use those funds to try to fund some of this if we're unsuccessful in getting grant money?
It does by default. Any excess cash that we have as a result of our operating income we have funds our debt service, funds our capital projects.
But just to put things in kind of a perspective, even at the rate that the surplus is happening thus far, the amount of the actual surplus at the end of the year that you could expect would only be a small portion of the cost of the Mount Hope Bridge
You're absolutely right.
dehumidification. So, following up on the President's question, grants are great. I love grants, right? But they're based on a certain amount of certain number of variables that go into them, some completely out of our hands, right? So we're hopeful to get grants, for example, at DOT, but hope is like the state motto, it's not a plan, right? So what we try to do is actually plan in the 10-year plan a time and date at which it will be necessary to put this in place and be able to anticipate that and have the funding, notwithstanding whether or not you get a grant, to have the funding available at the time you're actually going to need to do it. Have you done that with the Mount Hope Bridge project?
That will be done when they do the financial plan on the capital
Okay.
plan. There's
So you will
several
be-
options to include no grant funding all the way
Right.
up to, getting the grant funding.
Okay, and so there will be a provision in the new 10-year plan to get this work done if our hopes and wishes don't come true, right?
That's right.
Okay, great.
As a matter of fact, we've already received RFPs, and we're in the process of scoring now, and we'll be scheduling interviews, so we've moved ahead.
You're doing the necessary work. Yep.
That's right.
Gotcha.
We're looking-
By the way, that helps with the grants too.
Right.
Yeah.
The further along you are in the planning and design process will help the grant writers or the grantors determine that there's a state of readiness, that if they fund it, they're going to see it built in during the term of their administration, right?
Shovel ready.
Oh, shovel ready.
Well-
It's campaign ready. You know?
Yeah, right.
If you spend the money that they give you in during their term, they get credit for it. And
And we're making sure that as we move forward in the meantime, that we preserve the eligibility for the grant funding,
Right.
For reimbursement for, if it would occur. come
Yeah.
down the line. And
Yeah, watch out with that, because not, depending upon the flavor of the money, you know, we explored some of those things. Sometimes it's not allowed.
Right.
You know, reimbursement of past expenses is not allowed with federal funding all the time. So, okay, great, thank
I have a
you.
quick question.
Sorry.
Just a real quick one. Since I'm new, I just ask, so with surpluses, you've had surpluses in the past, correct? Yeah. Has the state ever come in and swept your surplus?
No, they're all pledged for our capital programs.
It's the benefit of being a quasi.
Well, I was chairman of a quasi, and they
Yeah.
came in and
Oh,
they
did
swept
they?
it. Yeah.
They scooped it, huh?
They scooped it, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, our funds that we receive, because, you know, we have the toll revenue bonds and the motor fuel tax bonds, so any money that we have and that we get in, they're pledged to pay down the debt and interest associated with those bonds, and also for the capital program, for those bonds are funding.
I understand, yeah, I understand, yeah. Okay.
So just to finish up on this concept of looking under every rock for money to do that project over there, and if we had our druthers, we'd also put a dehumidification on the Pell Bridge, we'd redeck the Mount Hope Bridge, and we'd finish the hydro demolition and decking on the Pell Bridge. So, and all of that they are attainable goals, we think. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but hope springs eternal, and
You know,
spring is
it's
around the corner.
It's the way to go at it.
It is, and there is another concept that we've been recently looking at, which I know the director is familiar with, but is an exciting concept, and it's an evolving concept, and that is the concept of toll credits. So what are toll credits?
Yeah.
Toll credits have to do with work that we do here that actually benefits the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, and it benefits the state generally by helping with future projects that are done with federal funds. If you use toll credits from work done here at the Turnpike and Bridge Authority, then in future projects, the federal funding does not require the state match. So it's a wonderful concept. There's legislation pending, I think by Jean Shaheen in New Hampshire, and Cory Booker have put together some legislation that they've been pursuing that would even allow state credits to be purchased and sold as among the states. So it's kind of it is an exciting idea. It's another means of perhaps it's a persuasive tool to say this is how we could get this done by using these toll credits to get those wires attended to at the Mount Hope Bridge. So another example. So, and maybe a subject for another board meeting as well, as we see how it develops. The suicide deterrent concepts, the legislative bills. Thank you both for being here today, by the way. As we have stayed in touch with the sponsors of the bills, Senator DePalma, Representative Solomon. I talk to them very frequently. We reached out to look for the right contractor that could do a study to determine the feasibility and to determine what kind of a deterrent would be appropriate. All of the factors from an engineering perspective that have to be looked at. Atkins actually worked on the Skyway, the Sunshine Skyway in Tampa. Atkins also has someone that who we knew from another bridge authority in New York that he's now affiliated with Atkins. So we had some really good intel on this company and their qualifications to do this work.
So they worked on it, rebuilding it, right? Not before it fell down.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and they
Just
were
the-
not. And just to be clear, because I think at least there was one media inquiry about whether Atkins was involved in the actual construction, and they were involved in the studies, just like we're asking them to be involved in a study now to determine
The
what's
design
feasible.
studies?
Yes. Yes. They're awaiting word from us that some funding has become available. I'm in touch with Senator DePalma, Representative Solomon.
Okay, so I would be concerned if, number one, Atkins is shown to have any liability in the failure of that structure that they took part in the planning of.
Oh, they didn't have, no. Oh,
Oh, okay.
No. They were not involved with that at all. These studies came after that.
To determine what the failure was.
No, they weren't. They were involved in the concept of a suicide barrier on the Skyway Bridge. So
Okay.
exactly what we've asked them to do here. They had nothing to do with the failure of that bridge. They had nothing to do with that. Which, as I recall, didn't it involve also a vessel of some sort that hit the bridge, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm not positive. They weren't involved until after that. They were involved in the concept of suicide deterrence, exactly the concept we've asked them to be involved with. So they're awaiting word from us. They're ready to go, but we're waiting to see what the funding source will be. So,
Is there a funding source that's part of the bill that's before the House and Senate? Are they providing funding in addition to mandating you do it? Are they providing funding in that bill?
The new bill that just went in the last couple of months, I don't believe provides for a funding source. I mean, I know there's been a fiscal note attached to the old version of the bill, and probably, I'm sure will be to the new version of the bill. But there has been no source. Jeff and I have been to the Senate Finance Committee. We did submit a proposal for APRA funds to cover this. And we were received favorably, I think, at the Senate Finance Committee.
Is that, do you know if that's included in the governor's proposed budget then?
I do not know. I have not been able to find that level of detail.
Probably a good idea to get in touch with OMB to make sure that it's in there for that. So
I've
that-
asked our analysts
Yeah.
a few times because we submitted 3
Yeah.
grants, if any of those
They've
numbers.
determined which ones that they've included, so probably be good to check on that,
Okay.
just to make sure, so that if the bill passes, you have the funds available to actually do it. Otherwise, you know,
On that specific part of it, I stay in close touch with Senator Seveny and
Yeah.
with Senator Felag,
Yeah.
who have been telling me that the funding is certainly on the radar screen. So we wanted to go from the radar screen to the budget.
Well, the-
give me a call after, and if necessary, we'll call the leadership and make sure that if it's in there, number one, if it's in there, number two, if it's in there, that we're going to have the support to make sure that it stays in there so that you could actually execute it. Otherwise, with all the money, everybody's going to be scrambling.
You know, those
become-
calls take place, if not daily, certainly weekly.
Yeah.
So, recently, you've seen the foam boards that are around the room. One of the reasons they're there is that we held a forum in January, and we invited the elected officials from all of the host communities. So Newport, Jamestown, Middletown, Portsmouth, Tiverton, North Kingstown. We invited all the senators and reps and some of the leadership as well to come down. They came down, they enjoyed. We had we had a PowerPoint running that showed some of our projects. We did a brief PowerPoint so that they understood what does, I keep saying, I make reference to the old Richard Scarry books that we had for our kids that were entitled, What Do People Do All Day? Well, what do we do all day at the Turnpike and Bridge Authority? So we briefed them on all of our assets, all of our projects, all of our efforts to get federal funding for the capital plan projects. And lastly, I just want you to know that more and more in recent months, I have been looking not only at our daily operations, what do we do all day, what needs to be done, what's critical, what needs to be done in the coming months and years, but also we are looking at the future. Who will be the members of the workforce of the future? Who will take care of these bridges? Who will make certain that Mount Hope Bridge lasts us 50 or more years? Who will make certain, who will be the faces? Who will be, who will be the engineers and the CFOs and all of the other people that we need to run these bridges? So we've been getting involved with projects that look to that, to the future, to the concept of of creating that workforce of the future. You do that by introducing children from kindergarten through high school and through college, introducing them to the infrastructure of this state. Many children upstate, I'll say, have never been over the Pell Bridge. We want to change that. We want to introduce them and put in their heads the idea, I could be an engineer here. I could do the finances here. I could run these bridges. I could make these bridges serve this community. So we've been working with an entity that's headed up by a former head of Rhode Island Public Transit Authority, and she has a nonprofit corporation that focuses on things like that. So we are hoping to partner with that entity and start to look not only at today, what do we need today, but what do we need in the future.
Very good. Okay, now, I thank you very much. And now, pursuant, okay, to Rhode Island General Law, paragraph 4246-5A1, I'd like to go into executive session. All of you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you all. Good job.